The silence in the Imperial Central Library was thick enough to drown in, broken only by the soft hum of data cores processing the endless stream of information that fed the Terran Empire's hunger for control. Naya Corvin moved through the crystalline corridors like a ghost, her footsteps muffled by the sound-dampening floors that kept the archives in perpetual quiet. At 24, she had already spent 6 years cataloging the Empire's official histories, sanitizing records, and ensuring that only approved truths reached the public databases. She preferred the night shifts. The library's towering data spires stretched into darkness above her, their surfaces pulsing with soft blue light as they processed information from across the galaxy. During the day, the archives crawled with Imperial historians, propaganda specialists, and censorship officers. At night, she was alone with the truth or what remained of it. Naya's workstation occupied a small alcove on the 97th floor, overlooking the sprawling capital city of New Terra Prime. The city's lights stretched to the horizon like fallen stars, each one representing millions of lives bound by Imperial law. She had grown up in those streets, raised by her grandmother after her mother's death when Naya was barely 8 years old. The official records stated that scientist Myron Corvin had died in a transport accident while conducting routine research on the Outer Rim worlds, a tragic loss, quickly forgotten in the Empire's endless march toward expansion. Tonight felt different. The air recyclers seemed to whisper secrets, and the familiar weight of routine felt heavy on her shoulders. Naya had been assigned to process a batch of declassified scientific records from 20 years past, documents deemed safe enough for limited academic access. It was tedious work, scanning each file for sensitive information before transferring them to the public archive. Most contained nothing more interesting than mineral surveys and atmospheric readings from conquered worlds. But as she opened the 73rd file in the batch, her breath caught in her throat. The document header read, Project Mindbridge Preliminary Report by Lead Researcher M. Corvin. Below it, in smaller text, Classification Level, Obsidian Black, Authorized Personnel Only. Naya's hands trembled as she stared at her mother's name. Myron Corvin had never been listed as working on classified projects, according to every record Naya had ever accessed. Her mother had been a low-level atmospheric scientist conducting routine surveys. The file should have been impossible documents classified at Obsidian Black level never left the highest security vaults, let alone ended up in a batch of materials bound for public release. She glanced around the empty archive, her heart hammering against her ribs. The surveillance systems were always active, but the night shift monitoring was handled by automated systems that flagged unusual behavior patterns. As long as she appeared to be working normally, she should be safe. With careful movements, she opened the file. The first page made her stomach drop. Project Mindbridge represents the most significant breakthrough in consciousness transfer technology since the development of neural interface systems. Initial tests on volunteer subjects have confirmed the possibility of complete memory extraction and implantation. However, I must express grave concerns about the ethical implications of this research and its potential military applications. Naya scrolled down, her eyes devouring every word. Her mother had been involved in developing technology that could literally steal memories and implant them in other minds. The report detailed experiments that had progressed from simple memory copying to complete personality overrides. But as she read further, the tone of the reports grew increasingly alarmed. Day 847. The Military Oversight Committee has rejected my recommendation to halt human trials. General Krauss insists that the strategic advantages outweigh ethical concerns. I have documented my objections in writing, but fear they will be ignored. Day 892. 3 more test subjects have suffered complete psychological breakdown. The consciousness transfer process appears to cause irreversible damage to the original personality matrix. I am formally requesting suspension of the program, pending further safety reviews. Day 934. My research team has been reduced from 12 to 4. Those who questioned the program's direction have been reassigned to other projects. I suspect surveillance of my communications has increased. If something happens to me, the backup files are hidden in the entry cut off mid-sentence. Naya searched frantically through the remaining pages, but they contained only technical data and test results. The critical information where her mother had hidden additional evidence was missing. Her breath came in short gasps as the implications crashed over her. Her mother hadn't died in a transport accident. She had been murdered to silence her objections to an illegal military program. And somehow, 20 years later, evidence of that program had found its way into Naya's hands. A soft chime from her workstation indicated an incoming priority message. Naya quickly closed the file and opened her communications panel, trying to look casual despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The message was from her supervisor, marked as routine. Naya, please note that file batch 7 alpha contains several documents that were included in error. These should be returned to classified archives immediately without processing. A courier will collect them within the hour. Supervisor Kane, ice flooded her veins. Someone knew she had accessed the file. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. She had perhaps minutes before the courier arrived to claim the evidence of her mother's murder. Moving with desperate speed, Naya copied the Project Mindbridge file to a personal storage device, a violation of every security protocol she had sworn to uphold. Her hands shook as she worked, knowing that discovery would mean not just the loss of her job, but likely her life. The Empire dealt harshly with those who accessed classified information without authorization. The elevator chimed softly from the corridor outside. Someone was coming. Naya sealed the storage device and slipped it into her jacket, then arranged the file batch on her desk to look undisturbed. She pulled up a routine cataloging interface on her screen and tried to control her breathing. As footsteps approached her workstation, working late again, Corvin. The voice belonged to Supervisor Kane, a thin man with pale eyes who had always made Naya uncomfortable. He wasn't supposed to be here. Supervisors worked day shifts, and it was well past midnight. Just finishing up the batch you assigned, Naya replied, proud that her voice sounded steady. Though I noticed some of the files seemed to be classified above my clearance level. Kane's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Yes, a clerical error. These documents were never meant for public processing. He gathered the file batch with casual efficiency. I trust you didn't have time to review them thoroughly. No, sir. I flagged them as soon as I noticed the classification markings. The lie came easier than she expected. Good. That shows proper attention to protocol. Kane tucked the files under his arm. I think you've done enough for tonight. Why don't you head home and get some rest? It wasn't a suggestion. Naya nodded and began shutting down her workstation, acutely aware of Kane watching her every movement. Only when the elevator doors closed between them did she allow herself to breathe normally again. The journey home through New Terra Prime's empty streets gave her time to think. Her mother had died protecting the truth about Project Mindbridge, and now that truth had somehow found its way to Naya. But the file was incomplete. Her mother had hidden additional evidence somewhere, and finding it was the only way to expose the conspiracy that had killed her. Her apartment was a modest space in the city's middle residential tier, furnished with the basic amenities provided to Imperial civil servants. As she sealed the door behind her, Naya realized that her life had just changed forever. Tomorrow, she would have to return to work and pretend that nothing had happened. She would catalog approved histories and sanitize records while knowing that the empire she served had murdered her mother and countless test subjects in pursuit of a weapon that could steal human consciousness itself. But tonight, she held a piece of the truth, and for the first time since childhood, she felt connected to the mother she had barely known. Naya placed the storage device in a hidden compartment behind her kitchen unit and tried to sleep, but her dreams were filled with images of her mother, not the distant figure from childhood memories, but a woman who had died fighting for what was right, a woman whose courage Naya would need to find within herself if she hoped to finish what Myron Corvin had started. Outside her window, the lights of New Terra Prime continued their eternal dance, and somewhere in those towers of power, people who had killed once for their secrets were preparing to kill again. 3 days passed in a haze of forced normalcy. Naya returned to her workstation each morning, cataloged sanitized histories, and smiled politely at Supervisor Kane when he made his rounds. But beneath the surface, her mind raced with questions that had no safe answers. The incomplete file burned in her thoughts. Her mother had hidden additional evidence somewhere. But 20 years had passed. Even if the hiding place still existed, how could she possibly find it? The answer came from an unexpected source. It was Thursday evening when she noticed the message tucked between routine work assignments. In her personal queue, the identifier showed it came from someone called memory_merchant with no return address, a violation of Imperial communication protocols that should have triggered automatic security flags. Yet somehow it had slipped through the filters. Your mother was brilliant. She chose her hiding places well. If you want to know where she kept her secrets, meet me at the Fractured Moon Cantina in Sector 7 tomorrow at midnight. Come alone and bring proof of who you are. Someone still remembers what Myron Corvin died for. Naya stared at the message until the words seemed to burn themselves into her retinas. Then she deleted it, her hands shaking. Someone knew about her mother. Someone knew she had been searching for answers. It could be a trap, probably was a trap, but it was also the first lead she'd had in 3 days of careful, fruitless investigation. The Fractured Moon Cantina occupied the ground floor of a converted cargo hauler in New Terra Prime's industrial district. From the outside, it looked like every other establishment in Sector 7, grimy, forgotten, and populated by the kind of people the Empire preferred to pretend didn't exist. Naya had never ventured into this part of the city before, and the unfamiliar sights and sounds made her acutely aware of how sheltered her life had been. Inside, the cantina was dimly lit and thick with the smoke of various recreational substances. Patrons huddled in shadowy booths, conducting business in whispered conversations that died when strangers passed too close. A 3-piece band played melancholy songs in the corner, their music almost drowned out by the hum of conversation and the clink of glasses. Naya chose a booth near the back wall and ordered a drink she didn't intend to finish. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness, and she began to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake. Then, at exactly midnight, someone slid into the seat across from her. He was perhaps 30, with dark hair that fell across, intelligent brown eyes, and the kind of lean build that suggested he spent more time thinking than fighting. His clothes were well-made but worn, and there was something about the way he moved, careful, deliberate, that reminded her of the security specialists who sometimes visited the archives. But when he smiled, the expression transformed his entire face, making him seem younger and infinitely more approachable. "You came," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. "I wasn't sure you would." "Are you the memory merchant?" Naya asked, keeping her voice low. "Among other things." He signaled the bartender and ordered something called Rim Runner's Revenge. "My name is Jorik Thane, and I knew your mother." The simple statement hit Naya like a physical blow. "That's impossible. You're too young to have known her 20 years ago." "I was 14 when she died," Jorik said softly. "My father was part of her research team, one of the scientists who was reassigned. When he started asking uncomfortable questions about Project Mindbridge, he managed to escape the Empire's reach and took me with him. But the experience changed him, changed both of us. Your father worked on the project, Dr. Henrik Thane, neural systems specialist." Jorik's expression darkened. "He spent the last 10 years of his life trying to atone for what they made him help create. When he died, I inherited his memories of the project and his guilt." "Inherited his memories?" Naya leaned forward, confused. "What do you mean?" Jorik was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the dim light. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of old pain. "The technology your mother helped develop, consciousness transfer, memory extraction, it didn't die with Project Mindbridge. The military applications were shelved, but the research continued in private hands. There are people now who trade in memories like others trade in spice or rare metals. I'm one of them." The implications crashed over Naya like a cold wave. "You can steal memories, not steal. Preserve." Jorik's correction was gentle but firm. "When someone is dying and wants their knowledge to survive, I can extract their memories and store them safely. When someone has lost precious memories to trauma or age, I can sometimes restore them." It's not the nightmare your mother feared, it's a tool for healing. But the potential for abuse is enormous, yes. That's why people like your mother tried to stop it. Jorok reached across the table and touched her hand briefly, a gesture so natural and comforting that Naya didn't think to pull away. She knew that in the wrong hands, this technology could be used to rewrite history, steal identities, even control minds. That's why she hid the complete research data instead of destroying it. She hoped that someday, someone would find it and use it to expose what the Empire had done. Someone like me, someone exactly like you. His fingers lingered on hers for a moment longer than necessary, and Naya felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. Before my father died, he told me where your mother had hidden the backup files. He made me promise to find her family if I ever had the chance, to help them finish what she started. Naya pulled her hand back, trying to ignore the way her skin seemed to tingle where he had touched her. Why should I trust you? How do I know this isn't some elaborate trap? Instead of answering directly, Jorok reached into his jacket and withdrew a small device that looked like a cross between a data pad and a neural interface headset. This is a memory viewer. It lets you experience extracted memories as if they were your own. Your mother recorded a message before she died, hidden in a memory crystal that my father managed to save. Would you like to see her final words? Naya's throat tightened. The rational part of her mind screamed warnings about unknown technology and dangerous strangers. But the daughter who had lost her mother 20 years ago whispered a different message. Here was a chance to see Myron Corvin again, to hear her voice and understand her final thoughts. It's safe, Jorok said gently, as if reading her internal struggle. The viewer is read-only. It can't extract or modify your memories. All it does is let you experience what your mother wanted you to know. With trembling hands, Naya took the device. It was surprisingly light, its surface warm from Jorok's touch. How does it work? Put it on like a headband. The neural interface is non-invasive. It reads the electrical patterns in your brain, rather than making physical contact with neural tissue. Jorok moved around to sit beside her in the booth, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and clean that reminded her of libraries and quiet mornings. I'll monitor the playback to make sure everything functions properly. Naya placed the device on her head, and immediately the cantina around her began to fade. Colors shifted and blurred, sounds became distant echoes, and then she was somewhere else entirely. She stood in a laboratory that hummed with advanced equipment. Through a window, she could see the crimson sky of an alien world, one of the Outer Rim colonies where her mother had supposedly been conducting atmospheric research. But this room contained nothing related to weather or climate studies. Instead, banks of neural interface equipment lined the walls, and a massive central console displayed brain scans and consciousness maps. That made Naya's head spin. If you're seeing this, it means I'm dead and someone has finally found the evidence I tried to preserve. Naya spun toward the voice and gasped. Her mother stood near the central console. But this wasn't the distant figure from childhood memories. This Myron Corvin was vibrant and alive, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, her intelligent eyes bright with determination and sorrow. She looked exactly like Naya, only older and bearing the weight of terrible knowledge. My darling girl, I'm so sorry I can't be there to watch you grow up. I'm sorry I can't explain in person why I had to make the choices I made. But I hope that by the time you see this message, you'll understand that some truths are worth dying for. Myron moved to a wall display showing neural skin results. Each skin was labeled with a number rather than a name, but the readings told a horrifying story. Project Mindbridge began as a medical research program. We were trying to help people with severe brain trauma by transferring healthy neural patterns to damaged areas. But the military saw other possibilities. They wanted to create perfect soldiers by copying the memories and skills of elite fighters. They wanted to interrogate prisoners by extracting information directly from their minds. They wanted to rewrite the personalities of dissidents and rebels, turning them into loyal imperial citizens. The image of her mother paused, looking directly at Naya with eyes full of love and regret. I discovered that they were planning to test the personality override process on a group of political prisoners, people whose only crime was speaking out against imperial expansion. I tried to stop the experiment, but I was overruled. When I threatened to go public with the information, they decided I was a security risk. Naya felt tears streaming down. Castor Vex stood in the sterile white chamber that served as his office in the Imperial Security Tower, staring at the holographic display that showed surveillance footage from the fractured moon cantina. The image was grainy Sector 7 surveillance. Network was deliberately kept at minimal resolution to maintain the illusion of privacy. In the industrial district, but facial recognition software had identified both subjects clearly. Naya Corvin, Junior Archivist, Imperial Central Library, no prior security infractions. Exemplary work record, personal life consisting of quiet routine and solitary habits. She should have been invisible to Imperial Security's attention. Another, faceless civil servant processing sanitized information in service to the Empire. And yet here she was, meeting with Jorok Thane. Castor touched a control, and Thane's profile replaced the surveillance footage. Former Imperial citizen, current, status unknown. Father deceased Dr. Henrik Thane, neural systems specialist who had fled Imperial space under suspicious circumstances. 23 years ago, son's whereabouts had been unknown until facial recognition flagged him entering New Terra Prime. 3 weeks ago under a merchant trader's identification. 3 weeks, just enough time to observe, plan, and make contact with someone who had recently accessed classified files related to his father's former work. Castor closed the displays and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window that offered a commanding view of New Terra Prime. At 35, he had spent 15 years climbing the ranks of Imperial security, building a reputation for efficiency and absolute loyalty to the Empire. His methods were thorough, but not unnecessarily cruel. He took no pleasure in violence, viewing it simply as another tool in service of order and stability. He had never questioned his purpose before, but lately something had changed. It began 3 months ago, when he was assigned to investigate a series of memory theft incidents. Criminals using illegal consciousness transfer technology to steal valuable information directly from their victims' minds. The investigation led him deep into the underground networks that traded in extracted memories, and what he found there troubled him in ways he couldn't easily define. The memory merchants weren't the monsters he had expected. Many were former Imperial scientists who had turned to illegal practices not for profit, but because the Empire had classified their legitimate research and abandoned promising medical applications. They helped trauma victims recover lost memories, preserved the final thoughts of dying loved ones, and offered hope to those suffering from degenerative neural conditions. They were criminals, certainly, but they were also healers working outside Imperial law because the law itself had become the obstacle to helping people. Sir, his aide's voice came through the comm system. Priority message from Supervisor Kane at the Imperial Central Library. Castor returned to his desk and opened the communication. Kane's thin face appeared in the holographic display, his pale eyes carrying the fervor of a true believer. Inquisitor Vex, I have a situation that requires immediate attention. One of my archivists has accessed classified materials related to Project Mindbridge. I've confirmed that she copied the files before they could be retrieved. Project Mindbridge. Castor kept his voice neutral, though something cold settled in his stomach. He had heard rumors about the project whispers of consciousness transfer, experiments that had gone too far, scientists who had disappeared for asking uncomfortable questions. I thought that program was terminated 20 years ago. The research was suspended, but the classification remains in effect. Any unauthorized access is considered an act of treason. Kane's expression hardened. The archivist in question is Naya Corvin. I believe she may have had assistant surveillance indicates she's been in contact with known memory merchants. Naya Corvin. The name clicked into place with the surveillance footage he had just reviewed. Castor felt the familiar weight of duty settling on his shoulders, but this time it was accompanied by something else, a nagging sense that he was being asked to clean up someone else's mistakes. Send me everything you have on the Corvin case, he said. I'll handle the investigation personally. After Kane's image disappeared, Castor sat in silence for several minutes. Project Mindbridge. He accessed his security clearance and pulled up what files were available at his level. But most of the documentation was sealed at classifications above even his considerable authority. What he could read painted a disturbing picture of medical research that had been corrupted by military ambitions. The lead researcher had been Dr. Myron Corvin, Naya's mother. She had died in what was officially recorded as a transport accident, but the timing suggested otherwise. Her death had occurred just days after she submitted a formal complaint about the project's direction, requesting that human trials be suspended pending ethics review. Castor pulled up the accident report and read it with the critical eye of someone trained to spot deception. The details were too clean, too convenient. No survivors, no recoverable data, no investigation beyond a cursory examination of debris that could have come from any transport crash. It was the kind of report filed when someone important wanted a problem to simply disappear. His COMM system chimed with an incoming priority assignment. The orders were direct and unambiguous. Locate Naya Corvin and Jorok Thane. Retrieve any stolen classified materials, and eliminate both subjects as threats to Imperial security. Standard termination protocols applied, clean, efficient, and deniable. Castor stared at the orders for a long time. In 15 years of service, he had never hesitated to carry out an assignment. But this felt different. These weren't enemy agents or dangerous criminals. They were a young woman seeking answers about her mother's death, and a man honoring a promise to help her. Their only crime was possessing information that someone in the Imperial hierarchy found inconvenient. He thought about the memory merchants he had investigated, the former scientists trying to heal people with technology the Empire had abandoned. He thought about Dr. Myron Corvin, who had died for asking uncomfortable questions about research she had helped create. He thought about the pattern of classified projects, disappeared researchers, and convenient accidents that seemed to follow anyone who threatened the Empire's preferred version of truth. For the first time in his career, Castor Vex wondered if he was serving the wrong side. But wondering and acting were different things. He had sworn an oath to the Empire, and that oath had given his life purpose and meaning for 15 years. Personal doubts were a luxury he couldn't afford, not with superiors watching for any sign of wavering loyalty, not with a career and reputation built on absolute reliability. He would track down Naya Corvin and Jorok Thane. He would retrieve the stolen files, and if they proved to be a threat to Imperial security, he would eliminate them as ordered. But perhaps, just perhaps, he could learn more about what they had discovered before making that final decision. The trail led first to the Imperial Museum, where security footage showed two figures entering the building shortly after midnight, using maintenance access codes that should have been changed years ago. The museum's automated systems had recorded their presence in the decommissioned technology wing, where they had accessed storage units containing obsolete android components. Castor stood in the same room 12 hours later, examining the empty storage compartment where a memory crystal had been removed from a maintenance android's neural housing. The thieves had been careful: no fingerprints, no biotraces, minimal disturbance to surrounding equipment, but they had left something behind, probably by accident. A single strand of dark hair caught on a sharp edge of the android's head. CASING DNA analysis would confirm the hair belonged to Naya Corvin. But Castor didn't need genetic evidence to know she had been here. What interested him more was the care with which the memory crystal had been removed. This wasn't random theft or vandalism. Someone had known exactly what they were looking for and where to find it. His investigation of Jorok Thane's background revealed more troubling details. The man wasn't just a memory merchant, he was arguably the most skilled practitioner of consciousness transfer technology outside Imperial control. His father had been part of the original Project Mindbridge team, one of the researchers who had fled Imperial space when the project took a darker turn. If Henrik Thane had passed his knowledge to his son, then Jorok possessed technical expertise that could make him extremely dangerous or extremely valuable, depending on perspective. Castor's comm unit buzzed with a message from his surveillance team. Facial recognition had flagged both targets at a residential building in the city's middle-tier Naya Corvin's apartment complex. They were requesting permission to move in for capture. Negative, Castor replied. Maintain observation only. I want to see where they go next. The truth was, he wasn't ready to close this case. Something about the Project Mindbridge files nagged at him. Gaps in the official record that suggested a larger story. If Naya Corvin and Jorok Thane were trying to expose something the Empire had buried, Castor wanted to understand what it was before deciding whether they deserved to die for their curiosity. His personal communique chimed with a message from an encrypted source, one of the memory merchants he had encountered during his previous investigation. Vera Salas had built her sanctuary in the bones of the old city. 3 levels beneath New Terra Prime's gleaming surface were forgotten maintenance tunnels, connected abandoned subway stations to decommissioned power plants. The Empire's surveillance network couldn't penetrate this deep. Too much interference from ancient electromagnetic shielding, and too little value in monitoring spaces that officially didn't exist. Naya followed Jorok through a maze of corridors lit by bioluminescent strips, salvaged from derelict starships, their soft blue glow casting strange shadows on walls covered with the accumulated history of 3 decades of Imperial expansion. Here, scratched into metal and stone, were the names of worlds that had been conquered, people who had disappeared, and truths that had been buried beneath official lies. "She's been building this place since before you were born," Jorok said, softly as they walked. Vera was one of the first researchers to understand what consciousness transfer technology could really do, not just for the Empire's military ambitions, but for ordinary people who needed healing. They emerged into a vast chamber that had once housed the city's central power distribution hub. Now it served as something between a laboratory, a library, and a refuge. Sophisticated medical equipment shared space with banks of memory storage devices, while living areas carved into the chamber's alcoves provided homes for perhaps a dozen people. The air hummed with the quiet efficiency of a place where important work was being done by people who understood the cost of discovery. Vera stood at a central console, her gray hair pulled back as she reviewed data streams that flowed across multiple holographic displays. She looked up as they approached, and Naya saw intelligence and compassion in equal measure in the woman's eyes. "Naya Corvin," Vera said, stepping away from the console. "You look exactly like your mother. She would be proud of how far you've come." "You knew her." Naya's voice caught slightly. "In 3 days." She had learned more about Myron Corvin than in 20 years of living with sanitized memories and official lies. "I worked with her briefly, before Project Mindbridge took its darker turn. She was brilliant not just technically, but ethically. She understood that power without conscience becomes tyranny, and she was willing to die to prevent that." Vera gestured toward a seating area where comfortable chairs surrounded a low table bearing refreshments. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." As they settled into the chairs, Naya became acutely aware of Jorok's presence beside her over the past day, as they had retrieved her mother's hidden data and fled the increasing surveillance around her apartment. Their partnership had deepened into something more complex. He had been patient with her moments of overwhelming emotion, steady during her periods of doubt, and gentle in ways that made her heart race when he thought she wasn't looking. "The data you recovered from the museum represents 20 years of evidence that the Empire has tried to bury," Vera began. "Video documentation of failed experiments, proof that test subjects were political prisoners rather than volunteers, communication showing that researchers who objected to the program were systematically eliminated. It's enough to bring down the current government and potentially restructure how consciousness transfer technology is regulated throughout human space." But Naya sensed hesitation in Vera's tone. "But exposing the truth won't be enough. The Empire has had decades to consolidate power and eliminate witnesses. Even with complete evidence of their crimes, they could simply declare the information fabricated and continue as before." Vera's expression grew thoughtful. "What we need is not just revelation, but revolution, of fundamental change in how people think about government, technology, and the relationship between power and accountability." Jorok leaned forward. What are you suggesting?" "The memory networks I've built over the years aren't just for healing individual trauma. They're also capable of mass information distribution, direct transfer of memories and experiences to large numbers of people simultaneously." If we could share your mother's memories with citizens across the Empire, let them experience her final message firsthand, it would be impossible to dismiss or distort. Naya felt her pulse quicken. You're talking about using consciousness transfer, technology to spread propaganda. I'm talking about using it to spread truth. Vera corrected gently, but yes, the distinction is subtle, and the ethical implications are significant. We would be forcing people to confront reality whether they wanted to or not, overriding their right to remain ignorant. The chamber fell silent except for the distant hum of machinery and the soft conversations of other sanctuary residents, going about their evening routines. Naya looked around at the evidence of lives lived in opposition to imperial authority, people who had chosen exile and danger rather than complicity with injustice. There's something else, Vera said quietly. We've been monitoring Imperial security communications, and we know they've assigned Caster Vex to hunt you down. He's one of their most effective operatives, methodical, intelligent, and absolutely loyal to the Empire. How long do we have? Jorek's hand found Naya's, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that felt both protective and reassuring. Perhaps days, perhaps hours. Vex is good at his job, and he has resources we can't match. Vera paused, studying their joined hands with an expression that mixed approval with concern. There is one possibility, though it carries enormous risk. What kind of risk? Naya asked. We try to convert him. Vex has been investigating memory merchant networks for months, and our sources suggest he's been troubled by what he's discovered. He's seen the healing we provide, the people we help, the hope we offer to those who've lost everything to trauma or imperial oppression. If we could show him the complete truth about Project Mindbridge, you want us to walk into a trap, Jorek said flatly. I want you to trust that some people, when confronted with undeniable evidence of injustice, will choose to do what's right rather than what's convenient. Vera's voice carried the weight of experience and disappointment in equal measure. Vex isn't a monster, he's a man who's spent his life serving what he believed was a just cause. When he learns that cause has been corrupted, he may be willing to help us restore it. Naya thought about the surveillance footage from the cantina, the knowledge that Imperial security was closing in on them. They could run, try to hide in the underground networks that Vera had built, but eventually they would be found. The Empire had too many resources and too much motivation to let this threat to their secrets survive. What would you need us to do? Meet with him, share your mother's memories, let him experience what really happened to Project Mindbridge and why she had to die to stop it. Vera reached across the table and touched Naya's free hand. I won't lie to you if I'm wrong about Vex. If he chooses loyalty over justice, you'll both be dead within hours of the meeting. Jorek's grip on her hand tightened. There has to be another way. There might be, but not one that offers any hope of actually changing anything. We could spend years releasing evidence gradually, trying to build public support for investigation, but the Empire would have time to prepare counter-narratives and eliminate anyone involved in spreading the information. Vera's expression grew. Sad. Your mother died because she believed some truths were too important to compromise on. The question is whether you're willing to take the same risk to honor her sacrifice. That night, as the sanctuary settled into quiet routines of rest and preparation, Naya found herself walking through the memory archives that occupied one section of the vast chamber. Thousands of crystalline storage devices lined the walls, each one containing the preserved experiences of someone who had entrusted their most precious memories to Vera's care. Having second thoughts, Jorek's voice came from behind her, warm and understanding. Third and fourth thoughts, Naya admitted, turning to face him. 3 days ago, my biggest concern was whether I'd correctly catalog atmospheric survey data from mining worlds. Now I'm planning to potentially sacrifice my life to expose a government conspiracy. Jorek stepped closer, close enough that she could see the concern in his eyes and feel the warmth radiating from his body. You don't have to do this. We could disappear into the Outer Ring territories, build new lives where the Empire can't reach us. Could you really walk away knowing what we know? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze searching her face. No, but I could live with my conscience if it meant keeping you safe. The simple honesty of the statement took her breath away, somewhere between the fear and adrenaline of the past few days. Between sharing her mother's memories and planning impossible missions, she had fallen in love with this quiet, brave man who honored promises and protected people without expecting anything in return. "Jorik," she said softly, then stopped, unsure how to voice what she was feeling. He understood anyway. His hand rose to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin with infinite gentleness. "I know," he whispered. "I feel it too." When he kissed her, it was soft and careful, as if she were something precious that might break under too much pressure. But when she responded, pressing closer and deepening the contact, he matched her intensity with a passion that had been carefully controlled but never absent. They broke apart, breathing hard,